Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of MVRO Talks. My name is Todd Burgon, Executive Director at the MVRO. And today we are going to be talking about auto fraud, something that I'm sure many of us have experienced in the past recent months and years. And joining me today, Shawn Vording, who is the president of CARFAX Canada. Shawn's been in the automotive industry for well over 25 years, and 16 of those have been with CARFAX/CarProof over the years. And he's been in many different roles, both in sales, customer support, business development, product management, and now is their current president. So today our podcast obviously is sponsored by CARFAX. And I would like to say thanks to Shawn and his team for supporting this so we can do this today. And welcome to the podcast, Shawn.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Todd. Really appreciate it.
It's good to see you, Shawn. So in the introduction, I went through a couple of the positions you've had at this company. You've been there a long time now, but obviously the most notable and most recent is your appointment as president of CARFAX Canada. So first of all, I congratulate in person. I'll congratulate you in public. Congratulations. Good for
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Really appreciate
So
it.
tell me a bit about your new role and what's going to be new at CARFAX Canada with you at the helm.
Sure. Yeah. So we joked internally that it was a 16-year interview to eventually get the role of president, and so I took on that role as of March 1st. And truthfully, what's going to change? Not a lot. We've run a very consistent business, since inception when Paul Anthony started the business as CarProof. So our commitment continues to be a data leader in every product that we offer to our dealers. Our commitment continues to be customer centric. And we always commit to our employees. And so no changes there. In terms of strategy, we, of course, have a bunch of things that we're working on. And so one of the big investments that we've made over the last 12 months, and we're going to continue to invest in that, is our brand. And so making sure that consumers know who CARFAX is and the value of a CARFAX vehicle history report. That has a big impact for your members and the dealers that are using history reports to create transparency. And making sure that they understand, the customers understand that the dealers are paying for a premium product to provide premium insights and transparency. We need to just make sure that we continually bridge that with the CARFAX brand. And so a continued significant spend on brand is one of our commitments. The other area is continuing to acquire more and more history data. And so while we are the most comprehensive report available in North America for Canadian cars, we're not done and will never be done. If there is data available on a vehicle, we have a team that's out trying to acquire that data.
That's good. Great. I mean, you guys have been obviously a leader in this area for a very long time. And I know you're not, you can never take for granted that we're always done, right? You just got to keep moving because the goalposts, especially in technology, they keep moving. I learned this the hard way this week when they switched my computer over as well. So we can all relate.
The final space that I'll talk about is we've always been pretty buy-sell centric in terms of our products, so history and valuation, and we know there's a really great opportunity in the vehicle ownership or service space to create the same trust and transparency that we've done on the used vehicle side. And so we are very shortly going to be getting into the vehicle service space where we can help dealers create transparency around what potentially will break on a car and use that as an opportunity to either provision customers back to the service department or to increase the number of line items per repair order. And so using our North American service database, we always talk about our accident database, we're able to create some really great insights into what breaks on a car outside of the normal regular wear and tear maintenance items.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing more about that. That's for sure.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. All right. So auto theft and auto fraud. It's you. I came into this industry in 2008 when the world was falling apart from a financial perspective, and you came in 2024 when auto theft and fraud was at its peak. So I'm interested to know. Governments have been talking about this. Obviously, nationally, we've been talking about it. Provincially, yesterday there's some big announcements made about driver's license suspensions for 10, 15, and lifetime. How have you as a company been involved in these conversations when it comes to auto theft and fraud? Because obviously it's a really hot topic right now.
Yeah, we've been very, very involved in this for a bunch of reasons. One, our commitment to our customers to make sure that we're helping create transparency, and fraud obviously is a major issue in Canada. Two, the data that we have is extremely relevant to help mitigate fraud, and then ultimately to help dealers and consumers if fraud is happening, to limit the amount of time that occurs from when the fraud occurs to when maybe one of these customers is bitten by it. And so we've been very involved at the federal and provincial levels with fraud. And so we've sat at the National Summit on combating auto theft, which was in Ottawa in February. I had the pleasure of being summoned to the floor of the House of Commons, where the committee that's helping to combat fraud did a question period with us. And we talked about different things that CARFAX Canada can do to help this problem. And then we've also been working with investigators in vehicle crimes, police departments. We've been working with them, providing them tools, and also attending their conferences. So we've been very, very involved and continue to be involved to help mitigate this as quick as we can.
Well, we appreciate that. I mean, the industry has to do everything they can to reverse this whole cycle, right? So, what are you hearing from dealers about regarding fraud, and anything specific that you can share that people that are struggling with this themselves, but sometimes they're afraid to pick up the phone and ask for help, right?
Yeah. So we're hearing that the frequency of this is obviously higher than it's ever been, and that's showing up in all of the reports across the country right now. We discovered almost 14,000 stolen vehicles last year on history reports. And so those are vehicles that someone's running a history report on because they're thinking of buying or selling that car. That's a very, very large amount of stolen vehicles, and probably the tip of the iceberg. But it just shows the significance of the issue. With dealers, I think that what we're hearing, two main things. One, the ports were one of the higher exit points for these stolen vehicles. And as the government's made progress on preventing those vehicles, or doing a good job of preventing more of those vehicles from leaving the country, a lot of the vehicles that are now being stolen are being either revinned or paper vinned. And those are showing up at dealership lots now, showing up as trade-ins, showing up, getting exported out of the country. And so the challenge with that, of course, is a dealer may sell a car to a consumer that appeared to be a legitimate vehicle with a legitimate VIN, and after the fact, it's discovered that it was a cloned VIN. Even worse, a dealer, or of equal significance, a dealer buys a car, it's sitting on their lot, they're trying to retail it, and 15 days after they bought it, it shows up as a vehicle that is also registered in Texas right now. And so the frequency of these cloned VINs and paper VINs is so much higher than it's ever been. And we believe that one of the newest tactics from these organized crime rings is to either paper a VIN, use a VIN that was never came off the assembly line, or to take a VIN from a similar year, make, model, trim, color vehicle and create a fake VIN plate and then try to sell it.
So, I mean, obviously these are things that people are getting very creative on. And as I mentioned, goalposts tend to move very quickly. So what are a couple of things that the dealers can do to protect themselves against some of the things you just described?
One, run a history report and look at the history. And if a vehicle is, in Ontario and at the same time it's registered in a different jurisdiction within North America, if a vehicle is in Ontario and it's getting serviced in other parts of the country, those are all absolute indicators of potential fraud or a potential cloned VIN. And so read the history report and look for events that don't make sense, whether that's service, registration, accident history. If it doesn't make sense, it's likely a fraudulent VIN. The second is the obvious one on the vehicle. When you're inspecting the vehicle, really, really check the VIN plates. So whether that's the windshield, whether that's inside the door, or whether that's any parts that are on the vehicle, just do a great job of making sure that the VIN on the vehicle matches the VIN on the ownership. And then, of course, the last one is specific to the ownership. Make sure that the consumer that's trading in that vehicle, that their driver's license and their personal information matches the ownership of that vehicle as well.
Yeah, we've seen some instances and heard from other conferences we've been to recently where sometimes the VIN on the door plate, for example, doesn't match the VIN at the windshield level. And so those are some of the things that sometimes are missed in haste, right? But
that's right. Yeah.
Some of the message is always, it's a life message as well, right? Is if it looks too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So
yeah, that's right.
That trade-in you've been waiting for forever automatically just, quickly shows up, and I can't believe they walked into my dealership, and potentially it needs a second look, right?
Right.
So, last thing I'll ask you about is, I know this is kind of a big question in terms of I don't want you to name 100 different things you guys are working on, but what are you guys specifically doing other than participating in some of the forums that you've mentioned and sponsoring some of the forums that are taking place now? to help them, with this issue that we're experiencing at the frequency that we're experiencing it as an organization? Is there anything that you can share with us that you guys have in the works, or you're doing behind the scenes that will give some people some peace of mind that there's some end in near, so to speak?
Yeah. So there's proactive things we're doing and then reactive things. The proactive things are working with federal government, provincial governments to try to close what I call a loophole in vehicle registrations right now. If I were to register a vehicle in Ontario, Ontario doesn't check for registrations across North America. And so we have access to that data, and we could inform any of the provinces that the car that they're trying to register in Ontario right now actually is also currently registered in Texas. And so finding a way to get that information into the province's hands to prevent these vehicles from being registered is a very, very important proactive step that needs to happen to help mitigate these. And so we are in conversations with all levels of government to figure out, is that a possibility? If it's not a possibility, what else can we do? So then we move into the reactive side. On the reactive side, I stated earlier that, make sure you read the history report. We're going to make a much stronger call out within the history report when we suspect a cloned VIN or a fraudulent vehicle. And so just make it easier to get that insight versus having to actually digest the report and determine the insight. So better user experience from that perspective. And then the final piece is working with insurance companies and banks with the same thing that we talked about with the different provinces, but making sure that before an insurance company puts a policy onto a vehicle, that we can inform them that, hey, this could be a fraudulent VIN. Before a bank does financing on a vehicle, inform them that this is potentially a fraudulent VIN. So getting that same information that a dealer is going to have into as many hands as possible to try to prevent this as much as we possibly can.
Well, I think that, what you touched on is key, and that is that we need to get to a point where, the databases aren't so segmented from each other when it comes to this type of information, especially in a provincial by provincial basis, right? Versus something that's more national in that respect. That's going to help down the road for sure. I didn't say I was going to ask you this, but I am curious. I mean, how do we line up compared to the U.S.? Now, let me just finish that question. I know we line up as far as car theft goes proportionately in the wrong direction. We're, multiples times on a percentage basis, much higher car theft in Canada than they are in the US on a per capita population base. And I know that has a lot to do with the port access and the fact that we're not searching containers and we're just easy to steal from in some respects. But how do we line up from a sharing, from a VIN perspective and that type of approach versus Canada and where you want to get to in Canada? I'm sorry that's a bit of a loaded question because we didn't, but I think it's relevant.
Yeah, it's a great question. Access to registration data across North America is something that we have because of our partnership with CARFAX US. It's a sister company within our organization. So we have access to every VIN in North America that's currently registered by jurisdiction. It's an incredible database to help with this problem. The big difference I would suggest between Canada and the US is really around privacy. And in Canada, there's a bunch of bills that the governments are working on right now as it pertains to privacy. And one of them is it's authored relatively gray right now. And we're trying to get clarity on whether or not VIN is considered to be private information. The overwhelming majority has stated that VIN is definitely not private information. It's available if you look through a windshield. And so we're just hoping that the government will actually put that into the new bill to make sure that for all of us that require VINs across the entire automotive ecosystem, that stays information that's readily available. And so that's really the only major difference, is that Canada seems to be a little more proactive in terms of addressing privacy issues. But in terms of access to information that we do have a solution for North America.
Okay, that's good. Well, thanks for answering that. And I think that, when you look at privacy and VIN and all those types of things, this is something that's actually in the customer's best interest to have this available, because, the dealer obviously ends up with an issue to deal with when they're dealing with fraud or auto theft, but so does the person that thinks they just bought a legitimate car that 7 days later they get told that, that was a stolen vehicle, we're sorry. And, so it really, something like that, when it's in their best interest, hopefully the government errs on the side of this is the right thing to do so that there's less frequency of that, because those are the stories that end up in the media, right?
Yeah. And to share one anecdote with you, we had a dealer in British Columbia contact us. The Jeep Wrangler that was sitting on their lot, they went to sell it, ran a new history report, and it showed up in Florida at the same time. They'd been, they'd had the car for a number of days, and it ended up being a cloned VIN. Mm-hmm. And so I personally wanted to go through the experience of trying to unwind one of these clone VINs. I stopped calling the Florida DMV at 180 phone calls. I documented every single phone call. There was no answering machine. There was no way to leave a message. I made 180 phone calls, eventually got to a human, and was redirected to a different department. And so the unwinding it took almost 100 days to unwind. I think we were at 94 days to unwind this clone VIN. And that's 94 days that either a customer or a dealer is forced to sit with a piece of inventory to figure out, whether or not it is the real VIN or whether or not it's the fake VIN. Wow. And so this has to be mitigated. It's a huge problem for everyone in terms of keeping vehicles flowing. And then obviously there's huge financial impacts and time impacts that come from this as well.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So imagine that exponential, the number of vehicles that would affect in just Canada alone. Now you just told me what you just did the first 90 days on the job. That was
yeah, isn't that the truth?
To the DMV in Florida, but
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, listen, Shawn. I want to wrap up today by saying, thanks to you and your company, CARFAX Canada, for helping us put on podcasts like this to talk about these types of things. You guys have been a great supporter of ours. I appreciate that. Secondly, congratulations again on your promotion to president. I wish you all the best and success, and I'm sure you will take this company to the next level. And thirdly, I'm looking forward that in about a month and a half now, we'll be announcing all of our keynote speakers for our ACE conference. And I also want to thank you guys at CARFAX for becoming our newest presenting sponsor for that conference, that you just signed a 3-year deal with us. So thank you for that partnership as well. And I look forward in a few weeks to getting this out to everybody about the exciting lineup that we have. So on auto fraud, thanks for the work that you guys are doing. And I certainly appreciate you joining me today.
That's great. We always appreciate the opportunity, and we appreciate the MVRO and your membership as well. Thanks a lot.
Very welcome. Thanks, Shawn. This is Todd Burgon signing off for MVRO Talks.